Let's look at the persuasive speech Global Burning by Joshua Logan. All right, here's the first paragraph of the speech introduction. By asking his audiences questions at the end of the paragraph, the speaker is inviting them to participate in the meaning-making discussion. Just like the idea of an enthymeme that we talked about in the first presentation, rhetorical questions, questions that you don't actually expect the audience to answer, can work very well in engaging the audience and involving them in the persuasive process. The speaker also does a very nice job of introducing the topic of his speech. We know right away that he's going to talk about global warming, and he doesn't have to waste any more time on introductory remarks. Do you think the speaker did an adequate job of gaining the audience's attention? I don't know about you, but I'm not convinced he did. In this paragraph, the speaker introduced some supporting materials to establish his credibility. It's really important to note that he's engaged in a definition of central terms, which is one of the main components of argumentation that your textbook addresses. It's really important for this speaker to define global warming as something that is beyond debate. You will notice that he says, "We used to debate global warming, but now we've come to our senses and appreciate that it's real." This is definitely an element of persuasion, because while most mainstream scientists do believe that global warming is a very real human-led threat, the issue is still hotly contested in the political world, especially in terms of what should be done about it. For the purposes of this speech, though, the speaker argues that global warming is beyond dispute, and he takes this definition of central terms a step further and claims that humans are the ones responsible for planetary destruction. He's not confusing fact and opinion because he is supporting his assertions with scientific evidence. But as you can see, there's a fine line between effective and defective persuasion. Here, the speaker is providing a rationale for the structure of his speech, and he neatly lays out his main points, which are arranged in a categorical order. It's not clear from his preview exactly what he wants us to do. Remember, I argue that figuring out your desired audience response is an important first step when you are moving from informative to persuasive speaking. Well, not only should you figure out your audience response, but you should also make very clear in the speech what you want that response to be. What do you think this speaker wants us to do? He wants us to be aware that global warming is an immediate threat. But then what? His speech does not seem to be geared toward changing national environmental policies, or even at changing our everyday practices that affect the environment. If it were, we would preview a main point to that effect. Could it be that the central term he worked so hard to define as above dispute is actually quite disputed? It seems he will spend the majority of his time in this speech proving that global warming is a major cause for concern. In this paragraph, which is rife with excellent language use, think green, act green, disposing the trash, which car to buy, which candidates to support, hot world is starting to catch fire, global warming must not become global burning. He does a good job in this paragraph of using colorful language that contains good imagery and of turning general claims that we need to think of the environment every day and on big picture issues into very concrete examples that we can all relate to by mentioning trash, cars, and politics. In week 7, we'll discuss the importance of artful language use, and you should keep this speech in mind when you do your reading for next week. In this paragraph, the speaker quickly and neatly explains what global warming is. Unlike the explanation he would give in an informative speech, however, the speaker has a vested interest in making sure he finds a bad guy to blame for the environmental crisis. And as you can see, he does a nice job of tying global warming directly to human action in order to support his earlier claim that we are the ones driving the planetary destruction. He makes that claim concrete here by targeting our energy use, food consumption, garbage disposal, and deforestation practices. Here, he takes advice from the world of informative speaking and puts the speech in terms the audience can understand. He makes the problem real by referencing weather the audience has already experienced and explaining very clearly what will happen to the weather they already know. In this paragraph, he broadens his focus from the local to the global, explaining how global warming is going to affect the rest of the world. Here is where he starts to lose sight of his central claim, that he will make us realize that global warming is an immediate danger. By explaining what will happen in the future to people who live on the other side of the world, the speaker is actually lessening the immediacy of his claims. He needs to remember that audiences are most concerned about the problems that affect their own lives, and he should target his discussions of effect to the immediate needs of his audience. He did a good job of that when he discussed the Memphis weather, but he shifted the focus away from his audience by arguing that populations across the world will suffer future effects. Note, though, that he does a great job of meeting this class's standard of discussion of social and cultural diversity. It's very interesting to approach global warming from this perspective because it's a problem marked by resource differences. The richest country in the world is doing harm to some of the world's poorest people. In this paragraph, he relates some scary statistics. But then he could do more to argue how they will directly impact the lives of the audience. He does a nice job here of answering the potential objection that an audience could have. It's not uncommon to hear people say that global warming must not exist. By bringing up scientific explanations to counter these claims, he helps the audience redirect their thinking. This idea that the ocean has masked the effect of global warming is an important one for this speech. It works to support the central principle from which the speaker argues, that global warming is real. Note that the minor premise that humans cause global warming cannot be unstated in this speech. The speaker has to work to make his audience understand that humans are culpable and will be negatively affected. This part of the argument is not so widely accepted that it can function as an enthymeme. Here, the speaker does an excellent job of mixing a discussion of social and cultural diversity with a discussion of the problem in terms the audience can relate to. Note that he is especially persuasive when he mentions the audience and their direct families. This really helps the audience see that the problem will affect them personally. Here, the speaker brings the speech to a powerful conclusion and settles the question I asked at the beginning. What kind of action is he seeking? It turns out the speaker is asking his audience to agree with him, but he hopes that by agreeing, they will be motivated to change. As you can see, issues that your textbook lays out as one or the other, cut and dried, are much more complex when they are applied to an actual speech. I hope that going through this excellent persuasive speech, paragraph by paragraph, gives you a better understanding of some of the abstract textbook concepts and a better understanding of what you would like to do in your own persuasive speeches.